It's just too much. They have to plan that thing 6 to 8 months ahead, and it's just unlikely that they can be able to kind of put that forward. So, another one again, talking about more, but we've already spoken about that. What else do we have here? Oh yeah, let's get into the Derrick May stuff. This might be a little bit macabre, so I guess strap yourself in because I think this ain't gonna be fun. So this is courtesy of Resident Advisor. 7 more Derrick May accusers come forward. Derrick May more accusers come forward. 7 more. Like, I always wondered, again, as heinous as this sort of stuff is, right? I wonder how it must feel for somebody that's being accused to go through this. Like, where there's tons of people coming out alleging that you did some unspeakable things to them. Like, what does that do to your psyche? Like, how do you react? Like, how do you wake up in the morning? Like, what do you do? How do you get through it? Who do you call? It must be such an odd place to be in, because I'd imagine, right, if you got accused of something like that and you called your mate up because you wanted help or support, most mates are going to ask you like, did you do it? So you're going to have to go through that did you do it question and story a few times to people closest to you. That's going to hurt. And you're going to have to decide whether or not you want to lie or whether or not you want to tell the truth. But even if you tell the truth, like, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, what do you do in that situation if you're the one being accused of these things? Like, because I guess in some respects, the damage has been done to the people that you hurt. Apologies probably aren't going to cut it now at the moment, because I'm sure these women have probably felt as if like the time for apology has probably been and gone. Redemption is probably not on the table as well, because there are certain things in this society that you do, you just completely written off. There's no road for redemption, which is, neither here or there. But it's essentially like a black mark on your name that you can never ever get off. And again, like you said, this is an actual journalistic piece where the journalist went out and interviewed loads of people, corroborated the story. So there's a lot of I's dotted and T's crossed to get this out there. It's not just some hearsay thing. So it's going to lend even more credence towards it. It's just a maddening situation. And even just the picture here alone, in it, he looks like he's ready to get up to some absolute nonsense, in it. That's not the face of somebody you want to leave around your sister, for sure. God damn it. So it continues that Annabelle Ross continues the investigation to May's alleged sexual harassment and assault. It says here, in November, Resident Advisor published the first part of the investigation. Rumors of May's alleged sexual assault and sexual harassment of women first emerged in November 2019. There are rumors, but supposedly, even from my outsider point of view, I've heard a lot of stuff about this guy just from being in the scene and being out and about. You hear people talking shit. So just imagine what's been going on. He said this at this time, Michael James, who co-wrote the 1987 hit Strings of Life with May, has been engaged in a long-running dispute with him over the track's royalties. Shared on his Facebook page details from private messages and private conversations he had with May's alleged victims, often without their knowledge or permission. Resident Advisor independently investigated the accounts of all the alleged victims and sources spoken to for the purpose of this article, as per the first part of the investigation. In the second part of this investigation, RH shares the additional 7 people who claim to have experienced or witnessed alleged acts of sexual harassment and assault and inappropriate, unpleasant behavior committed by May. If that wasn't enough, right? If that wasn't enough, you're getting accused of sexual harassment, assault, inappropriate or unpleasant behavior. So it's like it's not enough just being a cock, right? You're also being an absolute creep. Do you know what I mean? This is like, God damn it, this guy, man. And again, you know what makes this more heinous? I'd imagine a lot of these people that are going to be detailed in these stories, most of them are fans. So you're taking advantage taking advantage of the trust that fans are putting on you. Don't get me saying in you sounds a bit gross, but Jesus, man. Eleanor, 2019, Europe. Eleanor was working as a photographer at a music festival and was scheduled to take photos of May, who was playing there. He wasn't responding to her text message at the time they were supposed to meet, but she spotted him having a drink outside a hotel where they were both staying. He invited her to sit down with him and 2 acquaintances until he was ready to have his photos taken. During this conversation, he had made a couple inappropriate comments about my body, like out of the blue in front of others, which made me feel a bit uncomfortable. Bloody hell. So just imagine, this is a photographer that's going to go take pictures of him, whether it's for a flyer, a local paper, someone's Instagram, whatever. This is not somebody that's like, a groupie or something, right? This is like somebody that's doing a job. They're a bit detached from it. They're just coming in, doing their job and leaving. So you would imagine there'd be a little bit more respect, right? A little bit more professionalism in that kind of scenario. But no, this dude's horniness knows no bounds, innit? It says, Eleanor says, one of the things he said was he asked how old I was. Said I was 28. And he said he could tell that I was over 23 because I've got CBH. Childbearing hips, bruv. This guy needs to be locked up, mate. Just for those pickup lines alone. It felt like a weird, creepy comment to make, like we weren't talking about anyone's bodies, and he just pointed out that in front of me and other people. Jesus Christ. He made another comment I can't remember word for word, but it was something along the lines of needing a black cock. Yo, Jesus Christ, bruv. Like he was insinuating that that's what I needed because I was so pale. What? Bruv. And that made me feel uncomfortable, but the others kind of laughed as well. See? And that's what I mean. As much as a monster as this guy is, right? This guy obviously is a monster and is an absolute creep who should be buried under the jail. The thing that really annoys me is that the scene and industry in general enables this sort of behavior. I don't think anybody is surprised or shocked by the news that he'd getting up to this stuff. I'm sure they've seen it with their own eyes. But at the time, it was advantageous for them to ignore it because he was, he was beneficial and he was useful to these people. He was making them money. He was selling tickets. He was boosting the reputation of the club, creating a good image, providing memorable nights, blah, 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 blah. So because of all those things, they were willing to overlook women being assaulted and being, insulted, assaulted, taken advantage of right in front of them because it was bringing them more benefit to have him plastered on the marquee of their club. That's the problem I have. Because I've always been a long believer that monsters are always going to exist, unfortunately. These sort of like Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Jeffrey Epstein level kind of people are always going to exist, right? We're going to always have good. With the good, you're always going to get evil. But the problem is at the moment is that we have industries and people around that enable that sort of behavior. That's what we shouldn't do. It needs to be called out at the start, not towards the end when the person's, because again, part of why this is sort of like gaining any steam, if you think about it, to be completely cynical, is because Derrick May's career has been in the bin for ages, right? People haven't really been feeling his sets. His productions have been a bit shit. So because of that, it's the perfect time to kind of bury him, quote unquote, because there's no one really fighting his corner. But at his pomp, when he was like a, globe-trotting, touring DJ, always on the charts, playing in the best places week in, week out, it was very difficult to make these stories stick. So these women's voices wouldn't have been heard back then. Again, it's the industry that's enabling these people to get away with this nonsense. I definitely feel like that. I don't think you can be somebody like a Derrick May in secret. People are going to see it. Do you know what I mean? So the moment people see it and ignore it is the moment they're complicit in a crime. It's like that. Do you remember? Did you watch that Jeffrey Epstein documentary on Netflix where they talked about it? And then, because I got really angry watching it, because a lot of the women who kind of turned him down eventually turned around and started being bookers and sort of liaisons for him to get other girls. So even though they knew that guy was a creep and they knew what he was doing and taking advantage of young women, and he was obviously involved in some crazy shit, they were willing to go and recruit other girls for him, even though they didn't want to do it themselves because of the money. Like, come on, man. Sometimes there has to be a little bit of personal accountability there in that respect. Scene accountability. It continues. Eventually, May said he was ready to take his portrait. After a few shots, Eleanor offered to show him the photo so he could choose which one. He just responded saying that if I picked a bad photo of him, he would tell everyone that we had anal sex and that he left me in mess in a hotel room. Oh my God. Eleanor says, I was quite taken aback by the comment at the time. The language he used was so aggressive. Jesus Christ. In shock, she laughed off the comment, just as she'd laughed off his previous comments. I feel like an idiot because I think I was so focused on being professional. Eleanor was new to freelancing and felt like I had to put his comfort before mine. She told a colleague at the festival about the incident, who confirmed this account to Resident Advisor, but Eleanor did not want to report it or make a fuss at the time. Jesus Christ, man. I feel like I was just pushed that incident to the side in my head just because it was him. She says, I mean, it's because he's so looked up to in the industry. He's seen as like this legend, basically. I saw him that way, but now I'm hearing about all these other allegations and now those comments that he made that put me into context of what he's done to so many other women. I feel disgusted by that, basically, and quite upset to understand that he's this kind of person. Fuck. If ever there's a red light, right, a warning sign about somebody's potential indiscretions, that would probably be it. And that was when? That was 2019 this happened. 2019, right? And we've got an account here for 2002. So he was still doing this mess recently. As of recently, he was doing this stuff. What are you guys saying in the chat? Derrick May's going to be a Bill Cosby techno. I agree with that one. Kieran saying I think they're close enough to him. They probably know now that he's capable of and allowed to happen. Of course, 100%. Jacob Broughton said what makes it worse for him is his ego. We know Derrick has a huge ego and it'll probably be his downfall. Who says that mess to women? Of course, who says that mess to women? But I just don't know how else you can like navigate an industry like that. It just doesn't like... The industry is small, right? Like I said, like I heard things about this guy and I'm a nobody, right? So you'd imagine like some people have known about this stuff for a long time and they've like willingly booked him to play in certain places. So what does that say about them? Are they willing just to like overlook these like heinous crimes because he's going to sell tickets? Like, fuck me. That is a really bad indictment on the scene. Really bad. Celeste, 2002, 2004. Celeste was in her late 20s and working in industry when she first invited Derrick May in Detroit to start working on a project together. When she arrived, he showed her his office. Then he said he'd take her to dinner to discuss a project. He suggested she wait in his apartment adjacent to his office to take her to the next door to let her inside. After entering the apartment, Celeste was halfway up the staircase when she felt a hand on my head and he was basically pushed me down to the ground as he turned around and pulled out his cock. Jesus Christ. I've been in Detroit for less than an hour and the man I was supposed to work with had his dick in front of my face. I'm not from Detroit. I don't know a single soul here. All I could think to do at the time was laugh. I was like, does that work for you, man? Put it away. He zipped up his pants and laughed as well and called me a tough audience. We then proceeded upstairs. He left me for a bit to attend the business meeting. Then he came back and as was nice as pie and we talked briefly about the project. Afterwards, I went back to check my hotel and ended up going to dinner with another colleague. This is like a common thing though. You hear, what was I gonna say? Pointing out as a thing he does, business meeting. Yeah, I think this bit, this is a thing I've read even in the first report. This thing where he kind of like radiates between like being cool and then being completely, monstrous at one point. I guess it's one of those kind of clever, manipulative things that sociopaths do in some respects, right? In order to kind of gain somebody's trust. So you kind of let them put their, because I guess what he wants to do in this respect, if you're an abuser, is that you want the person to be somewhat willing. You're not trying to force them, right? Even though he's obviously forcing his flipping piece in their face, but there's an element where you kind of want to you want to present them with an option that they have no option but to accept, sort of thing, right? Which is obviously point blank abuse. But then he obviously does that thing where he can kind of like, haha, only joking. It's like, nah, mate, you're not joking. You know what I mean? We're talking about business. You're trying to make a track and then you're pulling out your piece halfway up and I'm about to kind of walk up the stairs and stuff. Just doesn't make any sense. Celeste believes that her dismissive response when May exposed himself to her started this whole chain of events with me and him, where I was fair game and he liked to antagonize me because I said no. When May invited Celeste to work with him in Detroit Music Festival the following year, she said yes. It was a huge opportunity for a woman working in music, but Celeste says she felt that May was regularly verbally and physically abusive towards her and other office colleagues during the 2 years that she worked with him. The sexual harassment was more day-to-day occurrence. Celeste says this man May would come in every day and try and grab my breast, or pull my skirt or rap. No, I don't know, mate. That's not normal. This is the thing too. I think there has to be a little bit of acknowledgement that, like, it should be one strike and you're out. if a guy ever touches anyone, a woman, guy, or whoever it may be, untoward, it should be one strike and you're out. You shouldn't ever give somebody a second chance if they try and do something, especially if it's not done in a reciprocal manner, right? If it's not you guys going on a date and him trying to make a move on you, but it's just like a random occasion where he just completely misread the signs and went way overboard and invaded your personal space, it should be a one strike and done. I understand that this story is a bit difficult because this is 2002, 2004. It's a different world, right? And I can understand too, at that time, being a young woman in the industry, it's just hard to navigate. We'll never understand that as dudes, right? Having to kind of navigate the bro culture. I think is wasn't it DJ Rebecca? DJ Rebecca said it recently in a Guardian article where she says that she was like, I think she was, I'm gonna say 16 to 18, somewhere along that line. And again, similar to that topless DJ story I mentioned, she had no idea how to get into DJing. She went to a local record store, didn't, and again, probably didn't have any idea about who was in there and what kind of vibe these guys were on, and asked if she could work there. And I think one of the people behind the desk basically said, yeah, you can work here if you suck my dick, right? And that was just said to her when she was like, I don't know, a teenager. So you can just imagine what it must have been like to be these women in the industry trying to navigate and make it a thing. It's just difficult, right? And sometimes you get put in situations where you feel like you have to accept or be okay with this kind of language and abuse because you just want to make it. But I think nowadays, especially with the proliferation of the music and the scene and it kind of blowing up and turning into a legitimately billion-dollar industry, raising festivals all over the places, clubs all over the place, it kind of is on you as a person to never put yourself in these positions, so to never allow yourself to be put in these positions. You have to kind of take agency of your own journey. And if you do encounter somebody who is an absolute monster, you should write them off instantly. It's not even a second chance thing. It's not worth it. If you want to go play in a club somewhere and the bar manager's a piece of shit, you have to write that club off, or you have to write at least that club off for that time being whilst that person's there. You can't constantly put yourself at the crosshairs of abusers, because eventually, because they're manipulative and they're psychopathic, they're going to without it sounding too crass, they will eventually break down your walls, and then you'll be in a situation where you'll be constantly regretting ever putting yourself in that position. Do you know what I mean? It's just not necessary at all. But I can just have sympathy for the fact that this is 2002 to 2004, a young girl moving to a new city, trying to make it, going and linking up with an old, again, because imagine back in the day, like, it's just, the access to these people was a lot more privileged than we do now. I guess we don't really look at DJs the same that they did back then. They're probably a lot more exalted, a lot more on a pedestal. Now you just see them all the time on your social media feed and shit, and you see them playing different places. So imagine the hero worship that you have. It's a whole different thing. But I just think he shouldn't be able to get away. People like him should be able to get away with this stuff nowadays. No way. It continues here. Celeste's final encounter with May was in London, where she moved in 2004. She ran into May at a boat party, not knowing that he was going to be there. Locked eyes with him just as he was getting paid for the DJ set. He was playing the party. May still hadn't paid Celeste for her work on the Detroit Music Festival over the past 2 years, and Celeste said he freaked out because he knew he owed me money. So he came over, and I'm with DJ Paulette, and he was foul to Paulette. Paulette recounts her own experience with May at the same boat party below. Celeste spent the rest of the party trying to avoid May, but at one point he staggered over to the table Celeste and her friends were sitting with a bottle of red wine in his hand. He seemed drunk to Celeste, which was unusual as she didn't know him to drink often. He comes over to my table, he slams a bottle of wine down and says, "This is just to thank Celeste for all the times that she'd let me fuck her." Yo, he says in front of all my friends. Celeste says she spent the rest of the party trying to convince her friends not to kick his head in. Bruv, man. This guy. A couple of days after the party, she got a phone call from May. He was really, really salty. He was like, "I guess I should just pay you this money. I don't know why you're making all this fuss. I was just going to pay you." I said, "Well, pay me then. Well, come to my hotel." He used to say this little private hotel in Tottenham called Royal. Celeste recalls the whole again, man. Like, why are you going to this guy's hotel? This is a thing. Like, honestly, these monsters are horrendous, but you have to do better, man. You have to do better. If a guy is like being this, rude and disrespectful to you in front of your friends and putting out your business and just saying the most insane things to you, there should be no occasion where they have the ability, A, to call you, and B, to suggest that you come to their hotel room to collect money that you haven't seen in 2 years. It's not going to end well. Celeste recalls the whole experience as a frightening one. It just got so dark, so I thought it was early evening. I was going to rain. I can't remember the room number. It was just please don't end as I think it's going to end. So I'd gone to his room by foot, not by elevator. His room was relatively small. I went in. He was rude and sarcastic from the jump, which is how I realized he wasn't going to tend to give me money. I was there for 5 to 10 minutes max. He was standing near the bed. When I went to leave, all I remember after this right hand slamming on the door. No. When he reached over my head after she had opened the front door, I was wearing a denim catsuit that zipped oh my God. He grabbed the zipper, pulled it down, and just above my crotch, I remember hearing his buckle clank. Oh my God. I'm not sure if it was done up for the time being. When his hand connected to the door, I kicked backwards with my foot and got him to his nuts before he had a chance. Okay, thank God. Before he had a chance to push up against me. He stumbled back a bit when I kicked him and lost grip of my catsuit too, and that gave me enough time to get out of his room. He only had one hand on me, which probably made it easier to get away. I didn't look back. I just got the hell out of there. Fuck me. Yo. You can't book this guy again for another. You can't. This man needs help, bro. He needs help. He needs to be thrown in the jail, thrown underneath the jail. He needs to be, his feet need to be put in a block of cement and chucked off the side of a boat. This isn't like, oh yeah, let's book you at the next Deck Mantle, right? Or ADE and shit, or Detroit event. This is madness. Madness. What was he going to do? Was he going to try and rape her or something? What the flip? Celeste has not seen May since that day. I didn't try to get my money after that. Oh, thank God. Over the years, I just haven't thought about this stuff. I had to put it in her traumatic memories of experience somewhere healthy. In November 2019, Celeste was contacted by a friend of May who had seen her private information shared on Michael James's Facebook. This was how Celeste first learned that it was personal information that had been shared without permission. Responding to this man, Celeste said, I did my best to deal with him given... Oh, so I guess this Michael James guy was trying to get royalties from Derrick May, and then because he was so desperate to get his money back, he just started including all the salacious stories he could about Derrick May to pay him in a bad light, which then inexplicably doxed and revealed who Celeste was, which I guess was, not warranted because she didn't want that information out there. What an absolute mess, man. I did my best to deal with him, given where I was over there with no friends around me. But Derrick is an abuser, and he abused pretty much everyone around him. I have seriously thought many times about how I could handle Derrick better, but it's not easy to stand up to an abused bully. Of course, man. That's the thing as well. I say this from a distance about not putting yourself in harm's way, but just imagine what it's like to navigate an industry where these people are meant to be gatekeepers and people that are meant to kind of guide you through and act as mentors. It just must be so difficult, especially being a young woman, especially being alone. Resident Advisor has seen the screenshots of his messages. Music journalist and author Bill Brewster ran into Celeste at an industry event in 2019 and 2009 and remembers being told about her ordeal. He said, we were just talking about Detroit, and then she started completely out the blue telling this story. She just started telling me the fairly forensic detail about what happened, about the fact that he assaulted her on the steps going into his apartment, and all of that I was really shocked at, and that someone could tell me something like this that happened. And then of course you've got Paulette's story here in 2014. You've got somebody called Terry in 1996 to 2009. Oh my God. Aria 2017. Peter 2010. Natasha. What's the Peter one? He abused the guy as well. No one was flipping safe, innit? Peter 2010. Peter was working with a DJ who played with May at the Melkeg during Amsterdam Dance Event 2010. He said it was just like a dirty talk consistently about women, and when they went by, he was just grabbing their asses, pulling them towards him, making indecent proposals. He was trying to get them into College Hotel, which is like a hotel that he was always at. He was always trying to be obnoxious also, like, God almighty. And again, this is what I mean as well that's abhorrent about this, right? Is that most of these people are pretty famous. They have access. They have clout. They have money. They don't need to do this, right? They have loads of people attending, sometimes men, sometimes women, who are sexually into them. If they just play the game cool, they're gonna be fine. They're gonna get looked after. But this sort of aggressive, broy, obnoxious, creepy behavior is just an evidence that this person is fundamentally flawed. They're not, you know what I mean? Like, there's something dark in him that is obviously very troubling, that probably needs to be, like I said, chucked off the side of a boat somewhere, to be honest. Peter says he's intervening when May started hitting on one of his friends. I said, you're one of my favorite DJs. What you do behind the turntable is great, but you could just leave her alone because she's just there to enjoy herself and it's not here to look over your shoulder. I'm just paraphrasing at this point. I didn't know what my exact words were, but he made a remark along the lines of bros before hoes. Oh, Jesus Christ. That was his way of trying to justify what he was doing. Peter says he's witnessed his kind of behavior from May many times over the years and at different gigs. He said that at the end of the day, that God complex comes in. I have a feeling that he doesn't even know that he's doing is wrong. I think the best way to look at Derrick is is that he's that weird uncle at the party that nobody trusts and nobody rumors about him. And at one point the rumors became facts, and that's what happened. Yeah, that's a very good description of Derrick May, the odd uncle at the party. But again, unlike your uncle, you don't have to, you're not forced to love him because he's not a family member. So you can just chuck him off the side of a cliff or something, because this is mad behavior, man. Mad behavior. And again, there's a part of me that wants to say something that sounds a bit odd, but I do think a lot of this stuff with Derrick May isn't really hitting as much as it should do because he's black. I think people don't want to get involved and, really, bury him because they don't want to be seen as, I don't know, whatever that term is that people use. There is something about it, because just think about this. If this was Tiesto, if this was Calvin Harris, if this was Armin van Buren, if this was flipping DJ Sneak even, right? People somebody with a more Caucasianist complexion, I think this would have been everywhere. But the fact that it's Derrick May, a pioneer of Detroit music and scene, there's this whole argument that exists at the moment about techno and its black roots and all this sort of stuff. People are very wary about being in front of and trying to point the finger and physically bury a very prominent dance music artist who happens to be black, because there's not many of them around. So no one's really put their name to it. So because a lot of the people on my feed who I follow who are very woke and kind of involved in the quasi social justice movement that's involved in dance music at the moment, fighting for equality, representation, all this sort of stuff, they're very silent on this issue now. Again, it might be because they've spoken about it prior, but there's not the same amount of vitriol that gets put to other people getting put to this story. It's a lot of just kind of casual sort of ambivalence, ignoring and moving on. And maybe there's an aspect of like people thinking, you know what, he's not the worst, there's people worse than him out there. But I think scummy behavior should be called out for scummy behavior. It shouldn't be excuses made for it, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm not going to read the rest of it. If you want to read the rest of it, check it out. The link is there from Resident Advisor. 7 more Derrick May accusers come forward, written by Annabella Ross. She's a very good follow on social, so if you follow her there, she always covers a lot of good stuff in the dance music scene. And again, let's see what happens going forward. Let's see what happens, because so far we haven't even heard any statements about his agency coming up and saying they've dropped him or anything. It's just been silent. So I think it says a lot about the scene, innit? It does say a lot about the scene. So anyway, let's move on there.